Let's talk about your brand colors, how to find the best colors for your brand and business, why it's really important to think about your customer and make sure that they're part of that decision. And I'll also touch on a little color psychology too, which I find completely fascinating, and I think you might too. But first, before you dive into Pinterest or putting together a mood board, or before you dive into really any branding or design elements, it's important that you really know your brand. So if you haven't done a lot of that discovery work, or if you don't have a clear understanding on those core elements or those attributes behind your brand, so your vision, your message, your audience, etc., I really recommend going back and making sure that you have that clarity first before you dive into any of the design. I'm actually going to link a video below in the description that talks a little bit more about that brand discovery phase and the 3 pieces that you need to really build that more powerful brand. So I'll add that link below. But to kind of give you the skinny version, the goal of all of your design and your branding should, and that's from your logo to your website to your copy to your color palette, the goal should be to help you paint the story of who your brand is and what really sets you apart, and to help you create an overall experience for your customer. So I always tell my design clients that their branding has to be this delicate mix of their brand's unique style and vibe, so what story they're trying to tell, and what's going to really attract and resonate with their customer. So let me give you an example. If you run a yoga studio and you want to create a really calm, relaxing environment for your guests, you probably wouldn't want to go crazy and use bright neon colors or all black inside of your studio. Regardless of how much you love neon, it's not going to paint that picture of the serene, calm experience that you want to provide for your customer. I know that makes sense. But you still can, that doesn't mean that you can't add in a bit of your brand's personality. So you can add a touch of color or a splash of kind of some edginess or whatever it is that sets your brand apart to different elements in your branding. So maybe it's adding a bright pop of color to your marketing. Maybe it's, if you do run a yoga studio, maybe it's putting a bright, colorful mural on the wall when a customer first walks in. So there's definitely ways to kind of merge both worlds together, be able to tell your brand story in a powerful way, but at the same time, taking into account that experience that you want to create for your customer. So that's a pretty wild example, but there are really subtle color mistakes that I see every day as well. So let me give you a couple of those examples. So first, pink. I tend to see pink misused in branding all the time. So brands that use light pink or even a really bright pink or bold pink in their logo or all over their website. Now, for some brands, this works and it's amazing, but if you have a more masculine audience, or you want to attract a more masculine audience, you might want to think about using more of a neutral color or more like a taupe or something like that. And I think this is changing slowly in the marketplace, but typically when the male audience sees pink or purple or even some shades of red on your website, on your logo, even on your product packaging, they immediately assume with the quickest glance that it is a brand for women. So if you're trying to attract a male audience, this obviously isn't going to be very helpful. So really think about what colors you are using and if it's attracting your client. I also see a lot of brands that are using more neutral or soft colors, which I actually really love this trend lately. But again, it's not right for every single brand. If you are a confidence coach, for example, maybe your mission is to empower women to use their bold, authentic voice. You might want to think about adding a bit more of a punch with a pop of color, or maybe a little bit more of an edgy vibe with a darker color. it's definitely something that they need to feel the difference of. It needs to catch their attention and be bold and bright, just like your brand is. So one more example. I don't see this a lot, but it's definitely one of the most noticeable color branding mistakes that I've seen out there. If you have a sophisticated brand or you want to paint the picture of luxury with your brand, you don't want to use all the colors under the rainbow in your logo or especially in your primary design elements. So if you take a look around at some more sophisticated or high-end brands, you'll notice that they might have bright colors in their clothing line or in their brand images or marketing even, but their primary brand colors are very simple and clean. They typically use black or charcoals or even blues in their logo, fonts, etc. And again, there's always ways to add in that personality and that pop of color, but to keep your primary, logo and fonts and everything a really simple color. A high-end brand that uses a pop of color, for example, is Tiffany's. So their branding is really simplistic and clean, but they have that bright blue that they're known for. But here's the thing with too much color. If you start adding all of these different colors to your brand, especially to your logo, which I never recommend, things can start feeling really youthful, which is great, again, if you have that kind of brand story that you're trying to tell. But if you're trying to create more of a sophisticated and upscale brand, you probably don't want it to feel too youthful or too playful, elementary, etc. Which it kind of makes sense, because if I walked into my child's kindergarten classroom, rainbow colors would kind of be all over the place. So that is kind of what's stuck in my mind, and a lot of other people in the world think the same thing. So long story short, color definitely plays a massive role in how we perceive a brand, even with a really quick glance. So it's really important to think about what colors you want to use to really, again, represent your brand story and speak to your customer. Also, remember that color is really just one part of your whole branding. And it's about really using a combination of all these different design elements together to really tell your story. So you could use a more dramatic or a more feminine font. You can use images that are more black and white with a grainy texture, or images that are really vibrant and happy. Or your graphic design elements, like those little icons on your site, they could be hand-drawn and really soft, or they could have a thick, bold line or bright color behind them. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of blend all of these things together to really help you craft the feeling, that overall feeling of your brand. So it's not just your colors, it's all of these different elements together. Okay, so I can't talk about colors and not talk about color psychology. If you're not familiar with color psychology or color theory, it's the study of how different colors can evoke a range of emotion or even a physical response. It is really, really fascinating, and you can find loads of information online, but I wanted to share a couple fun facts with you. For example, did you know that the color red can actually make you feel hungry? And it can also raise your heart rate. It's pretty interesting, right? But there is a reason why I think it's over 80% of the restaurants and the food industry use red in some capacity over their branding. And next time you go into a restaurant, take a look around and see if there's red on the menu, red on the walls, etc. You won't be able to not see this now. The color blue is typically associated with trust or authority. Again, makes sense because you think about uniforms. You think about a police officer's uniform or military uniforms that have blue in them. This is also why a lot of banking and financial companies use blue in their logo. It really kind of distills that feeling of trust before you even know what their brand is all about. Brown or khaki colors are really seen as helpful and dependable, which again makes me think about UPS or even the Boy Scouts. And yellow and orange can actually make you feel happier. There's a reason why McDonald's has those big yellow arches and why they call their kids' meals Happy Meals. So color psychology is just super fascinating, but just like everything else, what's that saying? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So your response to a certain color or even to a certain shade of color could be very different than mine. It's really based on our differences in our life experiences and our environments and all the things. So this is another reason why you really should think about your customer when you're deciding which colors are the best fit. It might be really tempting to choose colors that you are drawn to, that you feel like fit your brand. But I think it's really important to remember that it's just really not all about you. For example, again, let me give you kind of a random example. If you were a lawyer and your primary clientele was, you worked primarily with convicts or people that had recently been arrested, you might not want to use the colors red and blue in your logo or your marketing design. And it probably is obvious, but if you are getting arrested and the lights on the cop car are flashing, you might remember that those lights are typically red and blue. Not to mention that the uniform that most officers wear is also blue. So it could be kind of a deterrent for your potential customer, especially if your branding is lined up with your competitors. They might even subconsciously not even be aware of why they're not attracted to your brand, but it will stick into their mind. So a couple more notes to help you really start thinking about your brand color palette and how to put that together. So when you are thinking about a color palette, I like to start with really just 4 to 5 colors at most. Start simple, you can always expand from there, but I recommend with starting with 4 to 5 colors, and 2 to 3 of those colors should be what I call base colors or grounding colors. So these are typically more neutral or whites, grays, blacks that kind of ground the palette. And then adding in whatever pops of color kind of bring out the personality of your brand. So again, just adding 1 or 2 pieces of like pops of color first to get those shades just right and play around with the tints, etc. So side note, tint is when you add white to a color to make it lighter, and shade is when you add dark to a color to, of course, make it more dark. So really picking your colors, and that, say you want green, is it going to be more of a sage green or is it going to be more of a dark emerald green? You can kind of start playing around with the right fit there. And then, like I said, you can come back and add more and more colors into the mix. So once you have your colors or an idea of what colors you want to use, then it's helpful to head over to Pinterest and start kind of compiling a bunch of inspiration. I love Pinterest because they have the search bar and you can look for very specific colors. So just like our last example, you can look for sage green or emerald green or whatever it is in the search bar. And you can also look for color combinations. So say you wanted to use emerald green and gold or emerald green and light blue. You can find a lot of different inspiration there that can kind of help paint that real life picture of what those colors can look like, whether it's in a logo or in a picture, on a shirt, painted on a wall or a door or what have you. So start compiling all of that inspiration and really getting a feel for how those colors can play out. If you want to take a deeper dive into color psychology and learn more about different colors and those feelings that they tend to kind of bring up in people, head over to our blog. I'm going to add a link below to a blog post that we recently wrote that includes a lot of the primary colors and those different feelings and the color psychology notes. And if you're feeling like your brand just needs an overall boost, I would also love to invite you to check out our 8-week program. It's called the Legendary Brand Academy, and and I'll work with you personally. It is a 2-month program. It's completely live, and I walk you through really that discovery piece of your branding. We'll go into the visual aesthetics and really telling your brand story through your design, and then we'll take it even further and talk about marketing and really positioning your brand. So if you want to learn how to build a more powerful and profitable brand, I would love to invite you to go check that out. You can go to our website, outlawcreative.com, or I'll also leave the link below the video. Okay, so I hope you found this super helpful. I hope this helps you kind of start thinking about your brand colors in a bigger way. And as always, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or better yet, come say hello on social media. I hang out on Facebook and Instagram almost daily, and I would love to hear from you. So come and say hello and make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Cheers!